Hello and welcome to For Fox's Sake. This is the preview with myself, Rob Hayes. We've got Tom alongside me. We may or may not have Pete and Jono joining us as well. They've given some very cryptic responses on the WhatsApp group. So if two voices turn into three or four, please do not be alarmed. They are kind of invited along to join us. An interesting preview for us this week because we are predominantly going to be looking ahead to Saturday's trip to Swansea, another Welsh opponent for Leicester City. But with Pete having man flu and missing out on a couple of big shows, I know those of you who watch and listen to For Fox's Sake podcast have been majorly disappointed not to see Pete on your screens recently. So in the absence of the big show, we've had two matches that, as For Fox's Sake, as a podcast, we haven't yet had the chance to respond to. And today, the 2nd of October, some breaking news coming from the club that CEO Susan Whelan has stepped down. Now, I appreciate I've called this the preview, and it is the preview, but we do need to spend the first few minutes sort of going over those few things. Susan Whelan has been the CEO or has been a senior member of the board for 15 years, the entirety of the time that King Power have presided over Leicester City, the most successful period in the club's history without a shadow of a doubt, and reports coming out today suggesting a breakdown in her relationship with John Rudkin. So, Tom, we'll open with your thoughts on that, really. Susan Whelan stepping down after 15 years as the CEO at Leicester City.
Yeah, it's a big change, and I think it kind of leaves us in a bit of a position as to what we're guessing as to what exactly is going on. I know Rob Dorset did some reporting earlier this afternoon about the situation, but I don't even think he's necessarily privy to all the goings on behind the scenes that we would like to know. I'm not entirely sure what to make of it for right now. It could be slowly edging towards some kind of broader change and shake up that I think a lot of the fan base, and myself included, have been hoping for some while. But it's kind of a strange name to begin with. I think we all were kind of hoping that perhaps we might have been reading that John Rudkin might have been given the boot as opposed to Susan Whelan. From what I kind of understand, if the relationship's broken down behind the scenes, it could go some way to explaining the broader disconnect at a very high level within the football club that we do hear about. The first thing that springs to mind for me is that press conference that Rodgers gave, where he went out and basically said, "We've got money to spend," and then a week later said, "Oh, it turns out we have nothing to actually spend." And from that point till today, it has felt like a continuation of what's exactly going on here. Is the hierarchy talking to each other, and what is the level of communication between obviously the big hitters in the football club? And I think that translates down to the football pitch as well. So kind of a shocking development. I think the timing's quite interesting. I don't know what you make of that, Rob, but for me, wasn't really the name I was hoping for, but could mean good or bad things. I guess we kind of just need to see how it all plays out.
Yeah, the timing is interesting and frustrating from my point of view, because I think in early episodes of For Fox's Sake, whether on the preview or the big show, we were still sort of talking about the fact that over the last few years, particularly the disconnect between the fans and the club has seemed to sort of widen. And that was really taking over. And it was difficult at times for the fans to see how they could get behind decisions being made, the lack of transparency and the lack of communication from the club, which we know has always been there, but that was fine when everything was plain sailing. But when things were a little bit rockier, that's when you needed some reassuring words from the club that didn't come. So it's frustrating for me that this has come now, where I think over the last few games, I certainly, and I think a lot of fans will be thinking similar to me, is my sole focus, or predominantly my main focus, has been what's happening on the pitch and watching with interest how Cifuentes manages to get his ideas across, how Leicester have begun to navigate this championship season, and almost those board level thoughts were kind of right at the back of my mind, and number one focus was on the pitch, as it should be. And now what's happened is it's kind of thrown this conversation back open again. It's eaten into 5 minutes now of our preview, which should mainly be about football, and it's about business and stuff. It won't help the negativity from the fans towards Rudkin, I don't think. It won't help those that think, I think they're a minority, but they're quite a loud minority. Those that don't necessarily think that Top is cut out to run the football club. Him stepping in as CEO, it's kind of been suggested that that's an interim measure, but there's been no indication as to when the process will begin for recruiting another CEO. So what it does for me, frustratingly, is just puts a lot more questions in people's mind, puts a lot more doubt about what's happening on the business side of the football club, which ultimately will detract, whether consciously or subconsciously, from our ability as fans to support the team, but also the players and the coaching staff will be thinking about it as well. We've had a comment in from Dorco, who's watching live, and thank you very much, those of you that are. If you are watching live, then please do join in. We're very very much want to hear from you. Dorco saying Whelan can't be happy. Again, we don't know whether she's been forced into making this decision, whether she's felt that 15 years I've served my time, it's time to step down. I think what we need to do to keep this preview to 30 minutes and to at least do some previewing of the Swansea game is probably park it there for now. And ultimately, we've got an international break coming up, during which I'm sure Pete Selby will be out of his man flu bed and back in the hot seat to chair a lengthier discussion around this, possibly, but probably not, with a little bit more information coming out of the club. So for now, we probably should leave it there. But an interesting development at board level for Leicester City. Another job we've got to do, because Pete couldn't be bothered to do a big show, is just have a very, very quick look back at Leicester's most recent matches. And thankfully, they're both the same scoreline against teams beginning with a W. And I think most of them followed a very similar game pattern. So we can kind of just clump those into one. 1-1 draws against West Brom and Wrexham. And very quickly, from my point of view, they were similar in the sense that the first half performance in both I felt was quite promising, but different in the respect that Wrexham, the second half, we were 1-0 up. And what I saw as complacency, and Marty Cifuentes has coined as arrogance, set in. And that's what caused the 1-0 lead to slip. Whereas I think when we were chasing the game against West Brom, things got a little bit more frantic, a little bit more disjointed, but ultimately it felt a little bit better in a way because we were able to convert 0 points into 1. Tom, a very brief summary from your point of view of the last 2 draws, which have given us 4 draws in a row.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think coming back to equalizers, leaves you on a bit of a high, as opposed to basically giving away a win. And it felt like that. I think arrogance is very much the right word. And I was glad to see Marty actually come out and say that. He didn't throw a particular player under the bus, but I think the attitude of the squad needs addressing. And that is something that's carried across from previous seasons as well. So I'm glad to hear him say that. I like Marty. I think there is some pressure in certain parts of the internet at the minute saying that 4 draws isn't good enough. But I think given the hand that he's been dealt, given the way that he speaks, the type of football that he's starting to develop, and the fact that he's learning from each game, that's something that I have a lot of time for. I think really what did us in with Wrexham was the substitutions. That is a critique that has been made, I believe, by QPR supporters about Marty, is that he's not particularly great at substitutions. And I think we saw that on the weekend. To me, they weren't great, but then obviously a lot of the players we have aren't great. I don't think Oliver Skipp, I just don't see it. I don't know why you would even have him around, particularly with players like Louis Page, who seem to have disappeared over recent matches, and I think would have offered far more. So I'm pleased in the sense that I feel like we're learning. I'm somewhat still nervous, because I think if that points deduction can come down and hit us quite hard, I think we are looking at a very, very bad position at that point. So we need to be converting these draws into wins. We don't really have a striker outlet to make that happen. what do you do? I still think you have to rely on a defense, and a defense which is, I look at Wout Faes and I see arrogance there. I see reckless defending. We're lucky to get the draws. Simultaneously, I'm frustrated that we're not getting wins.
Yeah, Dorco's back on. We'll let you have another moment there, Dorco, saying that draws can be both disappointing and exciting, but our 4 draws in a row have all been disappointing. I think you're right in the sense that Leicester City, I still think with the squad that they have in comparison to other Championship squads, and ultimately the expectation now is that Leicester are right up there at the top end of the Championship table. So the expectation is there that you wouldn't necessarily draw 4 in a row, that you should be converting at least 1 or 2 of those into victories. So I guess the next thing we should probably look at then is any. You've thrown a couple of players under the bus there, saying, having said that Marty Cifuentes definitely didn't. But I mean, £20 million for Oliver Skip is an absolute crazy kind of number that we paid a couple of seasons ago. Especially when, for me, the standout player and the player that I really enjoyed watching in the box-to-box role at the weekend was Jordan James. He looked way better at driving from midfield and arriving in the attacking position slightly later, rather than where he'd been employed the previous game to fill the hole that Ramsey had left by starting more advanced in the midfield. I think him and Winks, hands down, is the best midfield pairing in the Championship. So then when we lost that, so Winks with the control of possession, James with, he's a really good all-rounder. He's basically, and it's the preview, so we have to do a bit of Booba bashing. Boubakary Samari always gets a little negative mention here. James is essentially everything that I thought Boubakary Samari would be when he signed, and could be even a couple of seasons in, but now definitely know that he is not. All action, up and down, good at pretty much everything. And then as soon as he moved more in a more advanced position, not that Skip necessarily did anything wrong, but I think we lost a lot of sort of combative play in the midfield. He'll run all day, Skip. I'm pretty sure he outruns everybody else. I'm sure I've seen that his running stats are higher than anybody else. He's got a great engine, but the game just seems to pass him by, whereas James was constantly grabbing it by the scruff of the neck. So he really impressed me, James. And somebody else who I think, and Cifuentes seems to think the same, might have a big role to play this season, Bobby De Cordova-Reid, playing a few different positions. He's clearly an excellent Championship football, having spent a lot of his career in the Premier League. So they were 2 shining lights for me, I think, James and De Cordova-Reid. And as we move on through the preview, we'll look at who we think should be starting at the weekend, and I'd have those 2 as nail-on starters for me.
Yeah, 100%. I think I heard a stat that said Winks had 70 touches in the first half alone against Wrexham. He runs the game. He's just pivotal. I think he could be the defining factor for our season going forward. But we need more people like him and people around him that complement him. Oliver Skip isn't that. He runs around a lot, but I'm not entirely sure what he offers outside of that. So for me, this last game was quite informative, because it kind of does show you quite a stark line in the sand in terms of who are the players that are up to it and going to benefit us and can win us games, and what is our starting 11 basically. Bobby De Cordova-Reid, I thought he had a great game. I don't mind seeing him in that 10 position at all. I thought he was great. I didn't see the game that was Ramsey's debut, so I was away, unfortunately, for that. So I can't speak to whether or not he should be starting ahead of De Cordova-Reid.
It didn't last very long, Tom, the debut, let's be honest.
No, by sounds of it didn't. But that could be an option, and that's good. We need options right now. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with those 2. And I think Samara is one of those where he can do it when he wants to. 5 and 10 minute spurts occasionally. He seems to want to play football, and he plays it to a really high standard, and then you'll get a game where he's just anonymous. So yeah, I would like to see Louis Page, like I mentioned before, potentially come back into the fold ahead of Oliver Skip. And I think our midfield starting something starting to emerge there that hopefully can produce some results. But we have to be really careful about who we bring in off the substitute bench as well. And I'm sure we'll get into that.
Yeah, let's one more person that I really want to talk about from the game against Wrexham was the surprise start of Patson Daka, who miraculously is still on occasion, granted, but still starting football matches for Leicester City. I cannot remember the last time that I saw him put in a performance that made me think, yes, he is ready to be a Leicester City striker. He's had plenty of time to adapt to English football. It's not for him. Wrexham had a centre back who has been with them since the National League days. So this guy was a fifth tier of English football, English football, Welsh football, league football. And Daka got no change out of him the entire game. Now, I've heard mixed reviews on Daka's performance. Maybe it's just because I watch him in the same way that I watch Boubakary Soumaré, and I've already decided they're both going to have a terrible game. So everything I watch is kind of magnified, really. I know Jono in our group chat said actually he thought Daka had done okay against Wrexham. But if you look on, say, BBC Sport, for example, I was just reminding myself of the key stats and stuff from the Wrexham game, and I saw that of the player ratings, he scored 2 out of 10. 2 out of 10. That kind of score is usually only reserved for somebody that's come on in the last few minutes and has had no chance to impact the game. The guy started and played, 70 odd minutes, something like that. He, especially when people want to see more of Carranza, ultimately, Cifuentes is watching Carranza on the training ground every day. He's better placed to make this decision than anybody else. So I'm not necessarily saying Daka starting was the wrong decision, but Ayew can't start every game. He's not necessarily physically robust enough in the latter end of his career. And Daka does offer something different. A couple of runs into the channels. Yes, he got the assist for the goal. I'll hold my hands up for that. And it was actually the first pass that I saw him make to a fellow Leicester City teammate. But Daka's not the man to lead the line, Tom, surely.
Rob, we might disagree here.
Are you a Daka fan? I did not expect it. Go on.
I wouldn't go that far. And before everyone riles up, I will try to make a case that's hopefully not too upsetting. But I like what he brings to the team more than I think I like what Ayew necessarily brings to the team. I think that, and that's purely in terms of balance. I think when Ayew plays, he wants the ball to feet and he gets deeper and deeper into the pitch. And given how limited our squad is in its ability outside of perhaps the wingers, who are looking isolated anyway, and I think a lot is being asked of them to actually produce and win matches for us right now. We need more options. And I think Ayew's great technically if you can keep him further up the pitch. But what I like about Daka is, yes, he'll pass the ball directly out of play, trying to pass it to somebody, and he can't shoot. He's not really offering anything. But I think that he's stretching that defense. Centre-backs are still terrified at pace. All it takes is somebody passing a ball up over the top or a through ball or something similar. And, instantly the whole team moves forward. So I think from a balance perspective, I think it tracks for me in my head that our performances with that initial first half 11, that was the best performance I'd seen of this season. We looked like we're playing like champions. And outside of obviously scoring the goals, I think that he's offering us something that's fairly important for the team moving forward. I would prefer to see him start over Ayew. I think in the same way that you kind of watch Boubakary Soumaré and you've already made up your mind, I look at Jordan Ayew trying to take corners and I just think, what is going on here? Like, you should be on the other end of this, mate. You shouldn't be taking this kick. And even when he does kick it, it's not a good corner. And I don't necessarily love what he brings. So great footballer. I got time for him, but I think overall we look better with Daka leading the line just to stretch their defense. But I will say it does feel like we're a Jamie Vardy away from actually doing quite well in this league. And I know that's an obvious thing to say. And, if you could just pick someone to score goals all day, you would. But if we just had that finisher that could actually be in the box and just tuck them away, I think we'd be miles ahead of where we are.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because I've read some fans and some journalist reports saying that they didn't feel that Leicester created a huge amount against Wrexham relative to the possession that they had, and I think the possession, especially in the first half, was very, very high, 70% odd, which is phenomenal, really, at this level. But I saw quite a few chances, a few opportunities to manufacture a chance where a slightly better decision or a slightly better touch in the box would have created one of those. I don't necessarily think it was as sort of keep possession at the back as people have made out. And you're absolutely right. If there's a natural goal scorer in there, then they convert the chances, and Leicester are 2, possibly 3-0 up at half time, in which case he possibly can afford to be a little bit complacent from my point of view, Cifuentes' point of view, arrogant, because you would have that swagger about you. Whereas 1-0 is a very difficult scoreline. And Wrexham managed to make changes that were more effective than the Leicester ones. I think then, I guess, if you're the headline from this preview is going to be that Tom thinks that Daka was the catalyst for the best first half performance of the season. I might be paraphrasing slightly there. I won't do it to you, don't worry. But if you're more in the sort of Daka camp, I'm more in the Ayew camp. I guess the question is, there's a third bloke there in Carranza, who, yes, is a new signing, and we've seen little bits and bobs of him here and there. And the problem is, I don't actually know what he can do yet, because has he got as much pace as Daka? Don't know. Is his hold-up play and balls into feet, is he as effective as Jordan Ayew in that respect? Is he a good finisher? I don't know. All I've seen is little glimpses of it. He seemed to have good awareness in the penalty area for me. And if he was willing to remain as the focal point that you said has made Daka your favourite to start at the spearhead of the attack for now, then I mean, could Carranza do that? I'm asking the question because Cifuentes probably clearly doesn't think so at this moment in time. Admittedly, we're only 8 games into the season. It's a long old season. We've got a long way to go. It's very clear that Cifuentes is still trying players out, trying combinations out, and new signings. Ramsey got himself suspended, so we've not seen what he can do. Carranza's not quite integrated yet. James seems to be the only new signing who actually is sort of nailed on starter. So the rest of them around are really sort of dealing with the dregs of last season. So that number 9 position is very, very important. Interesting point. I'll pick you up on a bit more detail on this for the wingers. That it is. I mean, Fatahu's won us 2 games already, or won us several points just by being him and cutting him from the right touchline and inside on that left foot. But I think you're right in the sense that all of the progressive play is lovely and looked great against Wrexham, but then the next ball was get it to the winger and get them isolated. And then if you've not got the number 9 in the box, then the winger is expected to basically beat 3 players and score a goal, which we need to lighten the load on them a little bit, don't we?
Oh yeah, they need support. I don't really know much about Carranza and what his style of play is as a striker. Obviously, Marty's seeing him in training and still choosing to pick other players, so maybe that says something. But I do like that he's got some fight about him. It does seem that he's not just going to stand around and get bullied. He's already been pulled up a couple of times during corners and free kicks for getting a bit pushy-shovey with other players, which I like. I think we need a bit of fight and a bit of aggression in the team. I think we are asking a lot of our wingers at the minute. We're asking a lot of Mavididi, who I don't think had a good game against Wrexham. I think he's really feeling the pressure at the minute. Some of his passing was quite questionable as well. So in terms of what the system does moving forward, I'm not entirely sure. When we get onto, who we're going to play against Swansea, I personally would be in favour of switching up the formation a little bit and moving to something like a back 3 to try and get more support in midfield, to try and have more runners making those runs, those overlapping runs on the outside of the winger or something similar, to be able to try and offer a different route into goal. They're not... I think what we saw against Wrexham is if Fatawu has a bad game, it really, really impacts us. And I don't think he was particularly outstanding against Wrexham. I know that they're getting double upped on, and that's a tough thing to deal with, but that also leaves other opportunities and areas in the pitch. If there's two men that is sitting on one winger, obviously somebody's free somewhere else, and we need to be finding that and exploiting it. So for me, I think we should be looking at who can we put into midfield, or how do we juggle this around with Ramsey potentially coming back to be able to help support that? Because yeah, you're right. We need to give them some support.
So we're at that time where we always save the last couple of minutes to have a very quick look at the opposition. So we'll quickly run through what we think our preferred starting lineups would be, and I would probably stick to the same back four. I don't think. I mean, it's hard because we're trying to second guess what Cifuentes is going to do as well, and I would probably go Ricardo, Vestergaard, Faz, and Thomas at the back. Purely because I think Faz is better on the ball than Okoli, and I think that is what's keeping him in the side at the moment. We've spoken, Tom and I, about Winks and James having to be the midfield two from our point of view. I would keep Deckard over Reed as the number 10 for now, and that because that trio seemed to work really well for the first half against Wrexham. Fatawu starts down the right hand side. I think he starts most games really for Leicester this season. Left hand side, Mavadidi's not done enough to keep his place. Monga impresses every time, so give him a start. And then I think maybe it's time that Carranza starts a game for Leicester as the number 9. I'd stick to the same formation for now, largely the same personnel. So it's Ricardo in for Chowdhury for me, and Carranza in for Daka, and I think that's the only two changes from the Wrexham game. Tom, talk us through this new formation. Go on.
Well, I mean, it's basically that. I mean, options are limited. I will say, do you prefer Luke Thomas over Victor Christensen at the minute?
Yeah, I mean, Thomas was singled out and obviously was brought off at half-time against Wrexham because he had a bit of a tough time against Kabore down that side and was already on a yellow card. But I think he's been solid enough so far this season to keep his place for now.
Yeah, I'd agree with. I mean, Thomas is one of those where he's not necessarily on my radar when I watch a game, but I know that a lot of people have felt like he's been putting in some pretty terrible performances and obviously got hooked against Wrexham. So I'm not too sure what you do really. I mean, I don't think Victor Christensen offers a hell of a lot as well. Formation change. I mean, I just would prefer to solidify the back line a little bit. So for me, I like a lot of what you've proposed there, Rob. I think, to be honest with you, like if there was a way of solidifying the back line a little bit more, I like all of what you suggested in terms of the actual layout of the team. If we had who was the Man City player that we had on loan last time we were in the Championship?
Callum Doyle.
Like that's the kind of person that I would quite happily have at left back, even though he was slow. I just feel like that formation was just more beneficial for us. I don't know why Ricardo didn't play the last game, if I'm honest. I think Chowdhury had an okay game, and I think he's done well enough over the last couple of games. But he would have been a much more obvious substitute in my mind to come on and actually solidify the game and be that captain, that leadership presence on the actual pitch. So I don't know why that wasn't happening. But if there was a way of getting him back in the side as well, I think that'd be really beneficial.
Let's have a very, very brief look at Swansea then, because I'm conscious that we're a minute and 15 seconds away from going over time. The manager, interestingly, is Alan Sheehan, who spent 5 years at Leicester City. When I was looking at this, it made me feel very old. That's back 2003 to 2008, for those of you that are interested. Long time ago. His first full-time managerial job did well after doing well as the caretaker at Swansea, and they've had a decent start. They're 8th in the Championship. Their 3 league wins have come against the 3 current occupants of the bottom 3 places in the Championship, which maybe says a little bit more about their start to the season. They've drawn 3, lost 2, scored 9, conceded 7, so kind of similar-ish to Leicester. They've got a couple of players that are in decent goal scoring form. Ronald, great name for a footballer, Brazilian, has got 3, and Slovenian international Zan Vipotnik has got 4 goals. So those two could be a threat. They've also got Liam Cullen, Welsh international, who was their top scorer last season, who's been kept out of the side by those two. So if they can put him in possibly number 10, advanced number 8, which is what they've talked about doing, it could be quite a dangerous looking attack from Swansea's point of view. It's interesting. They're just outside the playoff places at the moment, but the points are now so condensed. We've done very well to stay in the top in the playoff places, Leicester, while drawing 4 games in a row. But it's all very condensed now, and picking up 1 point this weekend, if other teams around us pick up 3, won't be enough to keep us in those playoff places. So, I mean, that's a very, very quick look at Swansea. Planet Earth has just been in touch saying, I would like to see the 3 behind Carranza of Mavididi, Fatawu and Monga, possibly see if Mavididi, I don't know, I'm speculating here, but maybe Mavididi in a more central role has been talked about before, possibly a little bit more freedom to go, get on the ball, and just be a little bit more creative rather than having to stick himself out on the left-hand side. Fatawu right, Monga left, possibly, is an option. So thank you, Planet Earth, for that. Pete's trying to be very clever here. He's decided not to come on because he can't speak, but he said Swans eaten alive by the foxes. See what I did there. Those of you who've been with us for a while on For Fox's Sake will notice that up until this season that we've been doing live episodes, and Pete likes to still on the big show sometimes, always got some kind of pun in the name of the show. No idea how he manages to think of them all. They've literally all come from his brain. I've never contributed the title of a podcast in 100, 200, 250. I don't even know how many episodes we're on now, but loads. We will finish with some predictions. So if you're watching live, you've got about 30 seconds to get yours in. Away 3 o'clock on Saturday. I am going to say for Leicester to have a 2-1 win, and I'm going again for Carranza to bag for Leicester. Leicester 2-1, Carranza on the score sheet. Tom?
Not another draw? Not tempted?
No, absolutely not. 5 in a row is too much for me.
Yeah, I'd say the same. I think 2-1. I think given their position in the table, I'm going to take some hopeful confidence from that and say that we'll get the win that we've all been craving.
Dorco going for 2-2. He wants 5 draws in a row. Planet Earth 0-1. I'm presuming that's Leicester as the away side and a 1-0 win for Leicester. Odd Fish coming in with a 2-1 win to Leicester. So echoing what we're saying here on the preview. Jason Harris coming in saying 4-0 to the Foxes. Wouldn't you love to see that 4-0 to Leicester? Thank you to everyone that's watched along with us and joining with the show this evening. If you're listening back in podcast format or watching back on YouTube or social media, please make sure that you are subscribed to our YouTube channel. You will then get notified when we do go live, and you can join in live with the podcast as we go through it. So no preview next week because we're on an international break, but I am absolutely certain that there will be a big version of the big show with plenty to talk about. And fingers crossed, I'm going to put it back up there, manifesting, fingers crossed that Jason Harris's prediction comes true and Leicester win 4-0 away at Swansea on Saturday. Thanks for watching and listening, and we'll speak to you soon.